Okay, so what were you saying?
It looks like I screwed up a little bit. So my so my father's father did not die when my father was young. It's his wife. My grandmother died. So my Saba, my father's father, remarried. From what I understood from the stories, a younger woman, and she's the one that made her way to Israel. She came with Shelley. Shelley, being my father's younger sister, was was the was the daughter of the second mother.
Oh.
Yeah, so Shelley is my father's youngest sister. So she and her mother, my step grandmother, came to Israel. So Shelley and Benjamin and Shelley's mother came to Israel. So she's the only grandmother that I knew in Israel.
I see.
Um, and um, and I'll show you at one of the other points some of the pictures that we have with her in Israel. So my grandparents from my mother's side, they passed away in Israel, in Romania. So I didn't really know them
They both
very
did.
well. I've seen my mother's mother a few times when I was very young. But neither one of them made it to Israel except Saba's stepmother.
Okay. Okay. So
So that's why when you look at the picture of my father's father, you recognize the Buyum features.
so that is actually your grandfather. Okay,
Yes.
that
Yes.
I thought maybe just they all were from the same
No,
village.
that's it.
So can we see that really quickly?
Sure. It's right here. And she is with my father and
So
my
okay, so this is
this one. Yeah. This is my
this is your grandfather,
right. And
Saba's
that's his second wife,
and that's his second wife, Shelley's mother,
Shelley's mother.
and that's
Me and my father.
that's you. Oh my God, so cute. Oh my God, you look like Abby, or Abby looks like you, I guess I should say, or sort of me and Benji and John. Wow, I see us all in there. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
And then this picture right here, this is your father
Yes.
plus, I mean, this is your grandfather.
Yes.
And then that's Saba. That's
Right.
our Saba, my Saba.
Right.
And that's the older brother who
Yeah.
died.
Right.
And this is,
My father doing all of these are, I don't know if you
stuff.
can see from here, but these are threads that are coming
Yeah.
from a cylinder.
yeah. And who's over here?
Okay, that's one of the. Oh, by the way, this is my mother. That's her passport picture, actually.
Oh, wow.
So that's my father, with some of the folks. I think one of the brother and
Saba.
one, yeah, and this must be a brother. I don't remember which one that is, and one of the workers in the textile factory.
Oh, cool, cool. Okay. So back to the life of Nelu. Because you were Nelu until the United States, right?
I was Nelu until no, I was Nelu not for long. In fact, when part of being in school in that melting pot that we had in the Ma'abara, in that transitional camp, was teacher encouraged all of us to take up Hebrew names.
Oh.
So I was looking for a name that I would adopt in Israel, and I'm looking at two possible names. One is Nisim, and one is Nisan. And I knew some people with similar names. And I remember the circumstances, but I ended up choosing to go with Nissan, and I did it officially. It's in my passport, in my Israeli ID. In Israel, you have
Wow.
to carry an identification card. And I remember seeing in there change from Nehru to Nissan. So this
How-
was part of the melting pot.
Did you discuss it with Salva and Safta?
I did. They were not thrilled with that, but it was part of being in Israel, being an Israeli, being part of the Israeli culture, Israeli society. I felt the need to do that far more than my parents did. And maybe it was a generation thing, or maybe they cling too much closely to didn't feel comfortable jumping into another culture. They felt comfortable staying with their friends, their families, and so that's where the name Nissan came. So
And so you were Nissan Buyum.
yes.
And when you were a kid, who was your first close friend?
Actually had two really good friends. They're both from Sahala. One was Yehuda, and one was Zevi. Zevi was a cat man. He loves cat. He had multiple cats in his house. And I remember when I came back, when I was in Iowa, and I was doing some research, I had one of my husband of one of my professors, Professor Gordon Harrington, had a grant with I think it was NIH, National Institute of Health, to study something had to do, and then he had multiple. He had one with the Army. He is a very bright scientist, and he was married to Judith Harrington, who was Jewish, and in northern Iowa, and really embraced me in both arms. Another Jew that is in speech and language and speech pathology. She was a professor of speech pathology. But anyway, the reason I'm going all that is so we were studying rats, but at the same time, I was interested in research that was done with animals. And I read all kind of publications on genetic studies that were done with rats, with cats, with dogs, and trying to link intelligence with certain genetic makeup, which was part of what Professor Harrington was working on. So I read this thing about cats. So when my next visit to Israel, and I visited Zevi, one of my friends, and I told him, he said, "Oh my God, I should be in the United States. I can do so much research. I can know so much about cats. I can leap and bound over everybody else." And I left. I remember that we had a good conversation about that.
That's really funny.
So Zevi was a good friend. Yehuda was another good friend. Yehuda, and they were all through Tel Baruch, through elementary school, middle school, and high school. All of us went to Gymnasia Herzliya. That's where we bonded quite a bit earlier. But we were in elementary school, middle school, and then high school. We sort of parted ways after high school because the most devastation happens to Zevi. He has asthma. And before you go to the army, you have to pass tests. And he was discovered that he has the kind of asthma that will prevent him from, they will not take him to the army. I thought this was a death sentence for Zevi because, again, it's the culture part. It's you feel like army is a natural step in the Israeli culture. You have to be, And then when we would get together at weekend break, and all of us will come back together and talk about their experiences, what we did, what we, Zevi will just sit there, he's, and that led to a great amount of depression for him, and he was devastated, and we all felt bad for him, but and then Yehuda ended up in the army, very bright, very, very bright. His father was in the foreign minister service, and he was involved in purchasing guns, army for Israel in Germany. So he would be sent by the government to purchase, and Zevi and Yuda will tell us incredible stories about all of the mysteries of how his father was able to secure arms to bring to ship to Israel. I had a few other friends too in the army. I remember Roland. Was a good friend of mine. There's some picture of him. And this is the beauty of the army. Just like it brings in different people from different culture. That's the first time I met someone from Morocco. Never had a Jew from Morocco. He was very engaging, Roland. Very engaging, very smart. He did not go to high school. He had different background, different upbringing, but we all felt, that again, this is part of the melting pot where you get to know different people, and you value them based on what they, their personality, not economic status or anything like that. So there were, but my closest friends, and then another good friend that I made in the army was Levi Spitzer, who was a medic. We both went to a medic training together, and we stayed friends afterward. In fact, he was my best man at the wedding. He lived in LA, and he came to Iowa. He came to Milwaukee when we had the wedding in 1975.
So I know there's the famous violin incident. Can you tell us that story?
Well, it's hard to tell exactly the accuracy of every facet of that because it all embellished over the years different stories. But my recollection is that it wasn't my favorite thing to do.
You had to play the violin.
My mother really wanted me to play the violin. They purchased the violin. I don't know why. And maybe, and because perhaps I wouldn't do it intentionally to leave something there, but maybe subconsciously. And I told you before, we go to school through, we hitchhike. So in the process of hitchhiking, you put down your bag, you put down whatever you carry with your violin. I think there was a tree there, so I put the violin on one of the tree branches. They didn't want it to get dirty on the floor.
In a case or without a case?
In the case.
Okay.
And we hitchhiked. And when the car stopped, there was somebody we knew that had picked us before, about 2 or 3 of us. And I picked up my bag, and I didn't look up on the tree for the violin. And I think I left it in, I left it in the tree. And the car went back to school. the car went back past the school. I came to school. I went, didn't think of the violin, didn't worry about it. When we came back, on the way back, we ended up, we took a hitchhike, went back home. It didn't, and then I discovered I don't have violin. I don't have the violin.
Were you scared? I would imagine you'd be nervous.
I'm not sure exactly what happened. I just said, I don't know what happened to the violin. I forgot it somewhere, or that's all I said. Well, the violin inside had my name and address. So whoever came there, saw that violin, saw the address, was decent enough
Wow.
to come to our house.
So you were very grateful.
So yeah, I don't know if I don't know if it's I don't think I would do it consciously because
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
my mother
Yeah.
would be very upset with that. I think
Yeah.
it was unintentional, subconsciously.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wasn't crazy about it anyway. So.
So, do you remember having any crushes as a kid? Was there any girl that you fond
Oh,
of?
I'm sure there were. There was one. I think I may have been maybe. Oh gosh, that would have been in the Mishkan. It would have been maybe 10, 11. There was this girl by the name of Lily. That her mother was divorced. She was a single parent. Lily had a brother, and I really became friends with the brother with the intention of getting to know more Lily. We did some things together, but Lily wasn't,
Yeah.
she had other ideas. There was a girl by the name of Anya, again, the same age, 10, 11, 12, that would send me notes. I remember when I went to high school, may have been 16, 17, she would send me letters. And it was strange because she lived in an apartment building, the Mishkan, like half a block from my parents' apartment. But she would be the person that can express herself in letters. So she would send me letters. That's what I remember about that.
And when you were at home at Savin Savta's house growing up as a kid, did you have breakfast before school?
Oh my God, I remember. That I really don't remember, Harry. I try to remember meals. I remember Friday night meals that my mother would work really hard to prepare a course, 3 courses, fish, soup, dinner, chicken with potatoes.
What kind of soup do you remember? Do you remember what kind of soup?
Chicken soup.
Chicken soup.
Chicken soup. And fish will be prepared, boiled fish. I know she would put carrots because always carrots around it with potatoes.
Desserts? Any desserts?
Oh yeah. My mother baked some chocolate, chocolate cakes. There's really always sweet things at home. Romanian style cookery involves, at least from what I gather from my mother's cooking, that it was Romanian style.
Yeah.
But
and what about? Do you remember like what an average lunch would be when you were a kid?
you asked a very good question.
Would you bring lunch with you to school, or did school provide
I
a
don't
lunch?
even remember that. I don't recall. Obviously, if you go for the whole day, it wasn't a whole day though. No, it's mostly. I don't think it was until high school that we went to the whole day. I think elementary, middle school was we would be back by 1, 2 o'clock.
Oh,
So we probably end
okay.
up eating lunch at home. But once we're in the middle schools, there were days in which we would have the cafeteria at school, I think, would have prepared something. I'm trying to think. There may have been some stuff at school that we would be provided. It was, but I cannot think of any specific what it contained or whatever.
Okay.
One thing I remember specifically is that when I was in the Army, and I just finished the officer school, and as officer, second lieutenant, which is your lowest level of officer, second lieutenant, which I never went beyond that because to go beyond that, it's beyond your 2.5 years of required service. You have to sign in to stay in the Army, then you can go to lieutenant or captain or whatever. But I stayed at the 2.5 years that I was responsible for and left. But as a second lieutenant, you have you don't have to eat with the rest of the soldier. You go to officer cafeteria or officers area, and there is a chef. So the two of us work. There were a couple of other people and a couple of other of my colleagues, and never had a chef before having lunch. So we ordered something, and he would prepare it, and we were so stunned by that. It was, and then we'd ask different things to prepare. Social life was, you asked before about some of the social lives.
Yeah.
One thing I remember that was really enjoyable is that must have been in late middle school. Tel Baruch is a community that borders the Mediterranean. So not far from the school is where the beach. So I remember Friday nights we would bike. I had a bike. We would bike to the beach. We would set up fire, and we would stay maybe till 10, 11 o'clock at night, then we'll head back home. But that's where some of the social life, some of the socialization, music would occur.
You played soccer too, right?
Soccer was a big part of my life. Oh my God, there were a lot of open field near Neve Mishkan. Between Sahala and Neve Mishkan, there were open fields, and we would set up our bags as the two sides of the goal. And so we would have a field and then we'd play and played forever. I mean, there was, and again, that's part of socialization, part of being involved. It was a great opportunity to get to know some of the other kids.
Did you hang out mostly with other kids that were like from school, or did you hang out with your cousins ever?
Well, I think not so much because it involves traveling. Because my cousins did not live in the Mishkan area.
I see.
They, Moti and Shimon or Shelley and Benjamin live in Rehovot. And Rehovot it's pretty significant. You have to take a bus to get or multiple buses.
I see.
Basically, the way Israel is structured, Tel Aviv is the hub. So you take a bus from Holon to Tel Aviv, and from Tel Aviv you take a bus to Rehovot, where Benjamin and Shelley. So, and then Nelu and Hari, my mother's sister's kids, they lived in They live in, I believe, Ramat Gan, which is another community. Again, you would need to take multiple buses. So socialization was, and we would visit with them when family would get together. We'd take a bus or taxi at times. But on a daily socialization was with friends in the neighborhood because it was the most practical thing to do.
And the music part. I know there's like a story about Elvis and the Grateful Dead, maybe?
Yes.
What's that
Yeah,
story?
I think it had to do with some of the parties that we would have. Again, middle school, high school, there were some of us who insist on having Elvis Presley records. Some of us who insist on having Pat Boone's records.
Pat Boone.
Again, it was more of a, it wasn't more of a having good time, having challenges, and yeah, Elvis was big at that time, and I mean, it was very enjoyable to listen to that music and some of the dancing that took place. The Platters were also big at that time. I remember
The Platters?
Platters. That's a group of, you never heard?
I don't know.
Oh my God, Ari. Let me play one song. You can
Okay.
that. I can play one song from the Platters. They will come back to you.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
There's a group of black singers.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. That played a whole bunch of. All right. Here we go. Oh, hold on a second. All right. Ready?
Classic.
They had.
It's like Motown.
How about this one?
Oh yeah.
You remember? Smoke gets in your eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Classics.
So these were the days in which there was that style of music was pretty predominant.
Yeah. Okay, last question I'll ask you for this segment. Did you have any like jobs or volunteer, like anything when you were a kid or in high school? Or was that not part of the culture?
Again, the limitation that you have in terms of you're limited transportation wise. I think my job pretty much, I don't think my parents would have approved of anything other than doing well in school.
I see, yeah.
Studies were taken, school was taken very seriously. I like school.
Yeah.
I enjoyed Hebrew. I enjoyed the what comes with that, the different material books. There was no need for me to look for another job, in terms of supporting. I think my father did really well. I mean, he knew so much about textile that different manufacturers that had factories really loved to have him has his expertise in that. So he did very well financially. So there was really no need. Once I was in Iowa as a student, then I took a job as a student is helping Professor Harrington in his research with rats. So that was
Yeah, was
really going back to school. The only time that I did any, it took me through the first few years of University of Northern Iowa, my freshman. No, it wasn't in freshman year. It was more in the sophomore year. Second year, I was University of Northern Iowa, where I approached Judy Harrington. I said, "Could you put a good word with your husband? I was looking for this job," and yeah. So, and this is where. So this must have been. Oh, this must have been 66, 65, 66.
Yeah.
The reason I say that because it was at that time was beginning to be a lot of Vietnam protests
Mm-hmm.
in different universities,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember that folks that worked in the lab, in the research lab, Professor Harrington asked me if I would join them for the next semester. We were going to rent a house that instead of living in a dorm, we would all live together. There was Tom, who was the general manager of the rat lab, really bright kid, who always admitted he's got one weakness. You gotta have donuts in the morning. That was his weakness. There was Steve, which was in music. There were two other guys, I don't remember the names, that and that was part of our work. So we ended up in this house, and I lived there for I think 1 or 2 years before I think Tom graduated. I mean, it wore a different schedule, all of us, but they were Tom and Steve were very much involved in anti-Vietnam. I remember going with them and trying to stay low key, not to get too involved in this thing. You're a foreign student, you can be deported.
Yeah.
With any kind of situation that
Yeah.
violates the law.
Yeah.
In some way.
Yeah.
But I felt camaraderie with them, so I would go with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is where the beginning of those protests, I think, in the mid '60s,
Yeah.
late '60s.
Yeah. That is very interesting.
Yep.
Well, so why don't we pause there for right now?
Okay.
And